Well, on behalf of the Watertown Eurtepe Music Club, I welcome you to one of the very few performances that we have had this year due to COVID. And it's nice to have a nice, good-sized audience here tonight. I know you're going to enjoy it. It was nearly 2 years ago, on the 4th of July, that my husband and I went to the Horde Museum over in Fort Atkinson, and this group was playing. And I was absolutely mesmerized by what I heard. Loved the music, loved the narration between the pieces. It was just touched my heart. And I immediately after it was over talked with Ed and said, "Can I have your contact information to see if maybe we could arrange for your group to play for the Eurtepe Music Club?" So without any further ado, we want to welcome Ed Pierce, the director, and this wonderful Harmony Cornet Band.
Good evening, friends. Good evening. I would like to thank Carol Sun Ruffin and the Eurtepe Club for their very, very kind invitation. It is a joy, a real joy, to share this wonderful evening with you in this amazing sanctuary. I can only give inadequate words of thanks to these wonderful musicians who came here tonight simply because I asked them. They are my dearest friends, and we've made music together for many years, not only with the Harmony Cornet Band, but also with the Palmyra Eagle Community Band and the Kettle Moraine Blues. Cornet Band. That's a name that needs definition, but we'll learn about that a little later. To do this, we will be using instruments dated from 1860 to 1910. They were not built with uniform intonation in mind, so blending them presents challenges beyond normal musical requirements. It is my honor to present to you the Harmony Cornet Band. In 1921, a nervous boy from Mason City, Iowa, joined the Sousa Band and was quickly acclaimed a flute virtuoso. He later went on to the New York Philharmonic and then a career as a composer of motion picture scores and stage musicals. But his heart remained at home with the small town band. In 1954, he wrote a love letter to his rural music roots. He called it The Music Man. His name, Meredith Wilson. Years earlier, as a new member of the Sousa Band, young Meredith would have frequent chats with his boss. One time, Mr. Sousa put him on the spot. "You know, I write the most popular marches today, don't you? You know they are. Do you know why they are the most popular?" He asked his young protege. "Well, they're the most popular because they're the best." "Well, they are the best, but that's not a good answer. They are the best because I write specifically for the military band." Mr. Sousa was quite correct. The term military band was applied to virtually any brass wind ensemble, regardless of its military or civilian status. Simply put, the military band was the ancestral father of today's American band. These organizations gave us a framework to musically build upon. Band music attracted a widespread, family-friendly audience. It was a different time. There were no radios, records, CDs, downloads, iPods, or "Alexa, play band music." It was all live, sometimes crude, but you know what? It was all wonderful, very wonderful. The 50 years between the end of the Civil War and the turn of the century witnessed an explosion of over 10,000 bands nationwide. Their music would forever transform our popular culture. So it begs the question, where did they come from? In the mid-19th century, there were no school music programs for training future instrumentalists. Members were adult and largely self-taught from instruction books that came from their instruments. As may be imagined, the beginner of an instrument of any kind is a person to be avoided because of the distressing efforts to get there. As for myself, I was required to go away back somewhere and shut myself in tightly. Peculiar sounds were continuous all over the village by day and night. Edwin Oscar Kimberly, Broadhead, Wisconsin. A new town band would begin with music that was both familiar and relatively simple. Something like this. Local newspapers advertised for volunteers, asking only for upright and intelligent gentlemen of cultural distinction to step forward and learn the art of instrumental music. In 1875, G.F. Patton's Practical Guide for a Band was published. Well, now anybody could be a band director. It outlined just how to find the right folks for the proper instrument. Let's try it out. Let's see if that book's any good. Tuba. We'll try the tuba player. Let's see what the book says. Quote, "The selection of the tuba player should be done with great care. He should be a stout fellow, capable of supporting the big horn without getting tired. He should possess plenty of common sense and patience for putting up with the blunders of the alto horns." Oh dear. Sorry about, we better play. Let's listen to the tuba. Oh, my back. 2, 3, go! Mr. Jim Nelson. They were called cornet bands because the lead instrument playing the melody was the B-flat cornet. Supporting it were E-flat alto horns, sometimes called peck horns, baritone and tenor horns, and tuba. Occasionally, a newfangled thing called a saxophone would show up as well. Added to this was a bass drum and a snare drum. Bands were versatile. They could play both in and out of doors. They could provide music for church in the morning and the picnic in the afternoon. Whether parade or concert, church or picnic, bands were heard everywhere. Band instruments were relatively inexpensive and were easier to learn to play than stringed instruments. A good town band required as fewer players than in a stringed orchestra. In some cases, it only took 6 brass wind musicians to do the job. Let's put it like this. Orchestras drink wine. Bands drink beer. You guys do drink beer?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, okay. I just wanted to make sure. And there's a seemingly endless variety of bands. Veterans bands, brewery bands, church bands, village bands, clown bands, boys bands, circus bands, cowboy bands, women's bands, military bands, postal bands, factory bands, minor bands, just to name a few. Now here is a pleasant selection just right for a warm summer afternoon. Pretty little thing. Isn't that a sweet little thing? That's Come Dearest, the Daylight Is Gone. Now, songs like that may have satisfied the middle brows in a community, but the high brows wanted to see cultural horizons lifted. They wanted opera. Even before the Civil War, brass bands carried at least 1 or 2 operatic selections in their music books. The famous Sousa Band played excerpts from Wagner's Parsifal in Grand Forks, North Dakota, 10 years before that work debuted at the Metropolitan Opera. Here's one I think you'll recognize. Good fun. The granddaddy of all summer holidays is always the 4th of July, isn't it? Parades, flag waving, speechifying, pie eating contests, and enough fried chicken to make you start clucking all the way home. Once, when Thomas Jefferson was our ambassador to France, he was to attend a dinner at the French court. Now, here's how it went. Each ambassador was to be presented with the court orchestra playing their national anthem. It was a very common practice to do so in the European courts. The fledgling United States, however, had no national anthem. But the brilliant mind of Thomas Jefferson sprang into action. Jefferson's solution was brilliant. Here, at least for one time, you don't have to stand, is our national anthem. One, two, one. I'd say that was pretty good improvising on Mr. Jefferson's part. Certainly by then everybody knew Yankee Doodle. This is one of my favorite times of our cornet band's year, the all-day church sing and basket picnic. Every summer we set aside one day in August for what we call the all-day sing and church basket supper. Everybody supports the endeavor because it helps pay the preacher's salary. Songs, secular and sacred, are sung to the band's accompaniment. Then baskets are opened and families feast together on the park lawn before heading home to do chores. It costs 2 bits a family. Now, not only can the preacher go home with at least an extra $15 to $20 in his pocket, everybody just has a real good time. We're going to play 3 hymns from the basket picnic. If you would please just withhold your appreciation until we finish the 3rd hymn. One, two, three. That sure is a lot of fun to do. Folks really look forward to that. Oh, this is a lot of fun. Gone a-courtin' at the dance, or as I like to call it, courtship from the buggy. Just hearing this music will turn any young man into a genuine cornfield Romeo. Just hitch up the buggy and take your sweetheart to the dance. Let's polka. Good fun. Well, when I was courting my wife, I don't know what I liked more, taking her to the dance or just enjoying that romantic, slow buggy ride home under a moonlit night. And that certainly called for a different kind of music, doesn't it? Here's one that's just a wonderful, wonderful romantic ballad, When You and I Were Young, Maggie. Purdy. It's called Memorial Day now. But, you know, during the small town band era, it was known as Decoration Day. It was set aside to visit the graves of our fallen and decorate the markers with flags and flowers. We took our children so they would learn their stories. Then folks would stop by the GAR post to say hello to the veterans. GAR, that's something you don't hear anymore either. That stands for Grand Army of the Republic. That was the Union Army Veterans Organization. There we would find the old boys squeezed into their uniforms, with buttons polished, fresh from the morning's Decoration Day parade. Now, needless to say, the town bands always played their old songs in the parade. As soon as the music began, it was only a moment, and their eyes would light up. You could see their expressions change as the music of their youth spilled over them. And once again, in their minds, they were young men again. One, two, three. The small-town cornet bands, well, they're largely gone now. Like their faded photographs, they recede from memory. The park gazebos have been replaced with band shells. Today they're known as city bands, community bands, symphonic bands, or wind ensembles. The once beckoning call of oompa has given way to jazz, show tunes, updated classical and modern contemporary works. But perhaps more importantly, we now have solid music programs to bring about quality instruction to each new generation. The modern sound is bigger. Oh, it's bigger and better, it's wonderful. But you know, gone is the charm of a B-flat cornet leading a dozen people in making homemade music on a warm summer afternoon. They left the seed of band music in their communities that has endured. And I'm sure if the old boys could come back, they would be astounded and proud to see what they began. You know, it all started at home. Very smooth and pretty. if you'll forgive us, we haven't played in a year and a half. It's been a long shutdown, as it has been for all of you guys. Take your seats, please. Have a seat and turn to that number I asked you to. I've got one number left that I'd like to trot out, if you don't mind. It's one we always play on the 4th of July. And when we play this, it always turns a lot of heads. And folks seem to enjoy it. I offer this piece as a genuine hot weather cure for when the temperature is pushing 95 degrees plus. Just listening to a few of these notes will cool you off in no time at all. One and two and ready, go! Now, just remember that when you're hot on the 4th of July. But by the way, did you notice how the main melody was a little different? Yeah, that was the way he originally wrote it. And when the guy kind of disappeared, today we would say he went off the radar, off of social media, so to speak, for the 19th century. His music publishers changed the melody, and it's remained changed ever since. And no one has yet to satisfactorily explain why that melody was changed from the way Jay Pierpont originally wrote it. But you heard the original animal tonight, and we love playing it for you. Thank you, dear lady, for inviting us. Thank you. And on behalf of the Harmony Cornet Band and all my dear, wonderful friends, thank you. Thank you for coming to listen to our little bit of musical offering this evening. Do you wish to say something?
One more set.
We got a few Union veterans that still remember the duty of a firing squad. I'll take a brief moment, as long as my friend Mark has asked, just to briefly explain these funny instruments. The percussion equipment is rope tension, calfskin drum heads, which is why it has that a different sound than your children or grandchildren's snare drum in the junior high band. Todd over here is playing what's affectionately known as the toilet seat baritone. And you can see why it picked up the name toilet seat, but it's a very rare instrument, and it's a recent acquisition. It plays rather well.
It plays very well. It's the first time I played it.
Wow, that's really good. I owe all this to my wife Nancy on snare drum. She's the curator for this collection, and all of these instruments are from our private collection. Dusty here is playing a Civil War over-the-shoulder. Is it a baritone or tenor?
Baritone.
Baritone, over-the-shoulder.
Very light.
Very light. Yeah, you'd think it would weigh a ton, and it's really easy to deal with. We have an alto bell front horn, And when you're dealing with an alto voice in the 19th century, it's the equivalent of a French horn in today's modern band. And then we have an early style saxophone, courtesy of Adolphe Sax. Now, Dusty, you want to hold up your instrument one more time? Keep yours up, Gina. The same fellow invented both of these instruments. You would think it would be different, but the same fellow, Adolphe Sax, came up with both of these. The over-the-shoulder instrument was a primary instrument in the Civil War, but it wasn't designed to be a war instrument. It was just a configuration that they came up with. Remember I mentioned gazebos? In the narration, a gazebo is where you stood in a circle, and with your over-the-shoulder horns, your music just radiated out over the park. Band shells, you have narrators and directional sound to an audience. This was meant to spread the music out all over the place and share musical wealth. Then we have, of course, our good stout fellow back here on the tuba, and it's a B-flat tuba, and it really kicks out a lot of sound, as you can hear. And then the three wise people here in the front row, we have a bell-up B-flat cornet. It's somewhat of a rare configuration. And then we have two bell front B-flat cornets. In the pre-Civil War and Civil War era, they had one smaller cornet called an E-flat cornet, but that was quickly discarded after the Civil War years. It was a very difficult instrument to play, and the B-flat cornet was just so much easier, and that's what led the cornet movement in the post-Civil War years. I didn't build a horn explanation into the narration because I wasn't sure if we were going to be a little too long-winded or what, but you seem to be patient, and so I thought we'd explain some of the tools of the trade. Once again, thank you all very much. God bless. Safe drive home. Thank you.